Today I want to talk about how to start a talent management company with little or no experience, which in the entertainment industry is not something that usually happens. And if you talk to most people in it, they will tell you that, oh, you need 2-3 years experience as an assistant at an agency or a management company. And that's what a lot of people do. They usually are an assistant for 2, sometimes 3 years, and they're usually a junior agent, maybe junior manager. But usually that's about the timeline, especially at the bigger companies. And starting your own thing is not something that gets talked about because the entertainment industry in a lot of ways, including in production, but also on the management agency side, there's a lot of kind of mystery in it. There's not a lot of transparency. Same with the accounting. The accounting in movies, very little transparency there. And that's a separate topic, but a lot of producers and people in film talk about that the lack of transparency. And that's the same with this. There's not a lot of information out there, or at least not clear information out there. And that's why that is, I don't know. It always seems like there's a lot of mystery around how things work in the entertainment industry when it's really not always that complicated. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. When I came to LA, I came out here in 2013. Drove out here with my brother. We drove from New York at the time. Basically came out here with nothing. I mean, that's kind of still a similar story to a lot of people out here. I didn't really know at the time what I wanted to do career-wise. I had just played college tennis. Tennis had been my main passion for a very long time. So I was a little bit lost, didn't really know where I wanted to go career-wise. So when I came out here, I had done in school before that, I had done a bunch of these personality tests, job tests, all these things that they give you in school to try to figure out what your ideal career is or what's best suited for you and your personality. I don't really believe in those things too much anymore. I don't think they're accurate most of the time. And I did those, and it told me that I should work in an advertising agency. A lot of those tests told me that would be a good fit for my personality. So I came out here, and first thing I did was go on LinkedIn and I messaged a bunch of people that worked at basically advertising agencies that I was interested in. So I Googled which ones I was interested in, found people, then found them on LinkedIn, messaged them. I messaged a lot of people at the time, maybe 100, something like that. Out of those 100, maybe 15 or so, I think it was around that number, it's a long time ago. Around 15 actually wanted to meet up for coffee. So, it's just like anything, just like any cold outreach, your hitting number is pretty low, but that doesn't matter because it only matters what your success is in it, right? So the 15 people I met up with, I basically just talked to them, kind of see how things worked at that agency. And then kind of through those conversations, I got a job at one of the agencies that hadn't advertised the job yet, that just opened up. So it was kind of cool. I basically had to not compete with anyone, which was nice. And so I just did I interviewed one time, but with 2-3 different people. Then I got that job, started that, and did that for 3 months. And I hated it. It was so boring to me. It was just not fun. It wasn't challenging, but it was also just, it felt like a waste of time. I remember I was there from 8 to 6, I believe. And out of those hours, maybe I worked 3, maybe 4 hours realistically, kind of spread out through the day, but that's basically what it was. There was a lot of sitting around time, a lot of downtime and things like that. So I felt like, what am I doing here? I could be home already, or I could just finish my work and go. It's a lot more about showing that you're working hard than actually sometimes getting the results. So anyway, I was doing that. I was not liking my life, so I decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else. And then through a random conversation with my dad at the time, who works in a completely different industry, he said, oh, why don't you try car logistics? Somewhat similar to what he was doing at the time, but still different. And he said, yeah, in America you can do this. And so I was like, okay, and how do I do that? And he was like, well, you just pick up the call, you make sales calls, and you get your first clients and all that. So he made it seem very simple. It was not very simple. I was like, okay, well, this sounds better than what I'm doing now. It's my own. I can do it from home. It's more freedom. So I started. It took me a while to do that. It took me 3 months to get my first client. I mean, I'll leave that story for another time. It's a long story. So I was doing car logistics for a while. I think it was a couple of years when my brother, who's also an actor, he had a manager. His manager wasn't getting him many results. Like, he wasn't getting many auditions. He wasn't too involved with anything really. So I was talking to him and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just start a talent management company. And I feel like I can do a better job than that. And he was like, okay, cool. And so I was like, okay, I'll start that. And of course, like anything, it's not as easy or straightforward as you think it is sometimes when you're about to start, which I think still is a good thing. I think it's almost better sometimes when you're starting something to go into it believing that it's not that difficult. Because I feel like a lot of times people don't start because, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult. And if you believe that, then you're not going to get started. And there's things that I've done that if I knew how hard it was, maybe I wouldn't have gotten started, who knows? But I always believed it was going to be a little easier for me. So when I started it, like I said, had no experience, no real connections. I really only knew my brother. So when I started that, I had to figure out basically how do you even get started? Like, what do you need? And what you need is the breakdowns. The breakdowns are the most important. So like I said, getting breakdowns is the hardest part. And the reason that is because normally you need some experience, you need recommendations at the time. So I believe you needed 3 recommendations at the time. Which, how do you get recommendations if you don't know anyone or you've never worked in this industry? And then the other thing that you needed was a minimum amount of clients, which again, very tough to get clients without having the breakdowns. So it's one of those things that seems like, okay, well, that doesn't seem possible. So you do have to work somewhere, right? Well, you can get around that. Like, I got around that. I basically cold emailed people within the industry. And again, it was a numbers game. Had to reach out to a lot of people. This was the hardest part. And then eventually got 3 recommendations. So that was step 1. And the other step was getting clients, because you had to show a minimum amount of clients. And that way I was already lucky that I had my brother, so that was 1, right? And through him, in his classes, I met some people that he knew from class and ended up signing a couple of them. But even if you don't know literally any actor, which almost impossible if you live in New York or Los Angeles, which, by the way, you have to live in New York or Los Angeles normally, or at least have an address in one of these 2 places to have access to the breakdowns. They require an address there. I guess if you live part-time in New York or Los Angeles or something like that, you could probably do it, but I do believe you have to live here full-time officially, so keep that in mind. So then I had the 3 actors or 4 actors I had at the time, just a few, not many. And then I had the 3 recommendations. So then I submitted all that, got approved. So the biggest step and the hardest step to me was getting that. So I got that. I think that in total maybe it took me 2 months in total. It was maybe 3. It was somewhere around then. So it wasn't too bad. So I got it fairly quickly in my eyes. And then the actual building the company starts, which is you need more clients usually, especially if you're starting out, because in the beginning you have no reputation, you have nothing really, so you're probably starting out with a lot of beginner actors. Very tough to get established actors, because why would they go with you? You know what I mean? So the next step is getting a lot of actors, so you can hopefully get one of them booking a bigger show, bigger things, and then that leads to attracting higher caliber actors. Well, not even higher caliber, bigger resume actors, let's call it that. So I did that through the same process that how I started, was classes. Classes is a really, really good one if you're starting out. You can just reach out to all these classes. You just Google, find all the classes, tell them that you're looking for clients, and you will get a lot of submissions. Even if you're just starting out, there's so many actors looking for representation always. If anything, you need to be careful that you don't sign too many or maybe not qualified actors, because you also don't want to be sending actors to auditions that aren't good at auditions. Will make your company look bad, which will make casting look at your company like, oh, like his actors aren't very good. So maybe they take you less seriously, maybe they take your pitches not as seriously. So it is important to make sure that you get good actors. You can get away with getting actors with almost no resume or no resume if they're good actors and they can audition, that they're not going to make you look bad. So the best way to do that is obviously, again, classes in my opinion, because then you can get recommendations from the teachers. They will tell you like who's good and who they think is really ready. So that's to me the best way to do it. And then obviously once you do that, you interview them, you should look at self-tapes. If they have nothing, like they've never done anything, which might be the case if you're starting out, so you're taking maybe very untested actors that haven't worked at all, then you need to have them self-tape. Since you have the breakdowns, you can actually get some sides there, or you can even just Google and get sides. Sides are very easy to get. Sides are basically just a portion, it's maybe a scene, maybe 2 scenes from a script, and to have actors basically tape that. And you can even just find full scripts online and just choose scenes from there if you want. Whatever you want to really get them to do some self-tape so you see how they audition, because how they do audition and how quickly they get it to you will, like if you give them a deadline, will tell you a lot how they would do when you get them actual auditions. So once you've done that and you've decided like, okay, I like these actors, this actor, like you sign them, and then you build your roster. So when you're starting out, you want more because you're basically hoping someone books something bigger so you can grow your company. So in the beginning, it's better to have a higher number, and from that higher number, you can start narrowing it down to who's booking and who's not booking, who you really believe can book something big. And then once you go from there, you can start growing to series regulars, and then obviously you start getting really particular about who you want to sign. But in the beginning, you're basically going off potential. So classes are a good way, like I said. Facebook groups can sometimes be okay. You really gotta vet people though. Facebook groups, Instagram, there's also a lot of showcases you can sign up for. A lot of those, especially in Los Angeles and New York. Yeah, I'd say those are the main ways that I would suggest. But my number one would still be classes, especially if you're starting out. So you can actually get a recommendation from the teachers who they think is most ready to audition. That'll help you a lot. So now you have your roster, you have the breakdowns, and you're pretty much ready. The good thing about management is you don't have a lot of overhead costs, not like a talent agency. Talent agency, you're required to have like an official office and things like that, so your overhead's a lot higher. You also have to have, I believe, a certain type of insurance. So there's a lot more rules and a lot more costs. Management, the main cost is the breakdowns for you. And that's, I believe it's $256 now a month, which is not bad. It's still something, especially if you're not making any money initially when no one's booking. But it's pretty low overhead in that way. So that's something to keep in mind, that you do have an overhead of $256 for the breakdowns, and you need that. That's non-negotiable. But once you have all that, you can get started. So when you get on the breakdowns, you can submit. It's very easy, like all the shows are there, and in the shows, all the roles that are available, and you basically kind of match your actors' profiles to whichever role you think they fit best for. And then in addition to that, especially with actors that aren't established, you need to be pitching. So either you're email pitching or you're phone pitching, but you gotta be pitching. And again, there's a lot of different ways to pitch. That'll be a separate video, but you need to do that, and honestly you pretty much always need to do that unless you get to like a really top 4 agency level, and even those guys still pitch their actors that aren't like hot right now. So unless you have like a Zendaya or something, like you're probably always pitching, right? So very important skill to learn to have, and especially when you're starting out, it's going to be really important. And the other thing you want to do as a manager, you're not just getting auditions. That's like, yes, that's priority number 1, especially in the beginning. I know more established management agencies, or if you have basically some clients with good agencies, then maybe it's not your number 1 priority always, but in general, for most management companies, it is still your biggest priority is getting auditions. It's also what clients want the most, and let's be honest, like, if anything, what actors will complain about is lack of auditions. That's always the case. So that should be your number 1 focus. But then you have other things as a manager that you should be very on top of, especially starting out again, just so you know this. But compared to agencies, you need to be very on top of their reel, how their reel looks. You need to be like telling them how you want that specifically. Headshots, really important. Like, make sure you research who the best headshot photographers are in your city. get them the best headshots. It is the most important thing for breakdowns, for pitches. If you have iPhone photos as headshots, or your clients have just average photos, you will barely get any auditions. It's so important. So I can't emphasize that enough. Get the best headshots and make sure they go with actual actor headshot photographers so that they get specific shots, not just shots that they look pretty. That's not all actor headshots are. It needs to be specific to certain roles. And again, especially in the beginning, you're going for a lot of co-stars with your actors and some of the guest stars, I'm sure, but it's very tough to get in for series regulars regularly if you have no resume. So you're probably getting in a lot of co-stars initially. So what are co-stars? It's like man number one. It's like people you like have 1 line, 2 lines, maybe 10 lines, whatever. So you're getting in for a lot of that initially. And for that, you need specific headshots. So make sure that that's on point. Can't emphasize that enough. And that basically covers how to start a talent management company with no experience. I'll definitely go deeper into some things that I talked about today, but it also would be way too long of a video. If you have any questions, just put them into comments, and any good questions or any questions that I see repeatedly asked, I'll definitely make a video about and help you guys out. Appreciate it.